Hello, Simone. Thank you so much for coming on with me today. I really appreciate the time you're investing into this interview. If I may introduce you, so you are Dr. Simone Boer. You are a neuroscientist and a coach, and you call yourself a neuro coach. You're combining it both. I love it. And so the people you are supporting are people who make use of your brain hacks in order to get unstuck and to gain the confidence to move forward in life.
Absolutely.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. And so if I may ask you, I'm doing these interviews because I'd like to bring awareness of the different or many different ways we can approach challenges and actually turn them into our advantage. And so if I may ask you now, what type of adversity or challenge would you like to bring to the table today?
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. So when you put the call out around overcoming adversity, I really thought about it. I went, I'm sure I've got something there. The first thing that came to mind was really from my childhood. And from the adversity, my parents separated in the 80s. And this was before any of, I guess, the social support systems were in place, particularly to help the female part of the relationship. So when my parents separated in the 80s, unfortunately, what that left was my mother, who was out of work, who didn't necessarily have any savings or had no savings at all, and two incredibly young children. Now, she fought incredibly hard to keep the family home. And throughout my whole childhood, she worked incredibly hard. And as you can imagine, coming from a family unit, she felt that in ways that she had failed at life and that she was only good enough to become a cleaner.
Wow.
So she worked incredibly hard, put her body on the line in order to be able to scrape together the tiny amounts in order to be able to put my sister and I through school and in order to be able to feed us. And
I can so relate to that. Sorry for interrupting you,
please.
but when I left my relationship, I felt just the same. And the job that I got was as a store assistant to work for a supermarket. I could not see myself do anything else. And it provided the stable income that I needed for my children and myself as well. So, and that was only like 15 years ago. So I can imagine how tough it must have been for your mom in the 80s.
Absolutely.
To leave the relationship.
So if I speak from, I guess, the child's perspective, from an adversity perspective, you can imagine then not being able to go on school camps, not being able to pursue out of school activities that you would see all the other children participate in. Now, she worked incredibly hard in order to get the food on the table, to make sure we were clothed and we were schooled. But that was about it, because she had, those were the resources she could gather for that. So it was from that background and my viewing of her and how she ended up in life that I made the decision that that would never be me.
Yes, interesting.
And that was, I guess, what you would call the adversity or the environment that I was brought up in terms of where I have come from, whereby it was a very poor environment, but an environment as well where there wasn't necessarily enough time to do stuff. It was always work. And it was an environment whereby there was always struggling.
Yes. Wow, I'd like to acknowledge you, Simone, because clearly you are part of the population who is not sitting in their comfort zone, accepting the circumstances they have been brought up with, but you actually used this to fuel your hunger to do something great in life.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Oh my God. Amazing.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to congratulate you on what you have made of yourself. I mean, you are such a successful person today. And I can't even imagine with how much pride it must fill you to see how far you have come.
Oh,
Amazing.
absolutely, because everything that I have built to now hasn't been handed to me. Everything is I have worked for. And you can imagine in an environment like that, growing into your teens, what do you naturally do? Well, you naturally work 3 jobs. And to get yourself out of that environment, and you get yourself an education. So not only are you getting yourself an education through university, but you're also working 3 jobs so that you can self-fund that education.
Exactly. Yes, amazing. How much determination and grit is part of that, isn't it?
Yep.
Yes.
100%. And it was literally the determination not to ever be in a situation like, unfortunately, my mother had found herself in.
Yes.
And it was really around, well, for me moving forward, how can I ensure that I'm always able to stand out on my own? How can I also ensure that moving forward, I have a reliable income and what that actually looks like? And so for me to then start my own business, that required quite a significant mindset shift as well. But
Absolutely.
there's also the life patterns as well, that when I had my own daughter, I went back to work after 4 months. So because it was literally, I didn't want that potential life pattern playing out for me. And it's really that fear and that determination that drives you to make some of these decisions that you wouldn't otherwise normally do.
Yes. Yes. But if this fear and determination wasn't driving you, you would have not achieved what you have achieved and make a reality.
100%. And so therefore that it's really from my beginnings and my early environment that has 100% shaped me who I am. And for who I am and who I am grateful for. The other thing that I've learned as well throughout my life is that it doesn't necessarily mean that I will follow that same life pattern. So it's about me then, I guess, breaking the mold to follow a new life pattern. And what's really quite interesting is that my mother was also in the same situation with her growing up. Now, unfortunately, my grandfather passed away when he was 14 years old, leaving my grandmother to bring up the 2 children on a farm, a lot of heavy manual work throughout my mother's life as well. So it's something that I'd worked out from a life pattern perspective that has been passed down from generation to generation as well.
Yeah. Very interesting. And at the same time, I must say kudos to your mom, because she got out of that relationship. And yes, it meant hardship for her. But have you ever thought about what it would have been like if your mom stayed with your dad in that unhappy relationship?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it was my father that left her for another person.
Okay.
So there was no,
No,
unfortunately, happiness or
no,
any happiness to be had
I get it.
in that relationship. So you can then
Yeah.
imagine also,
Oh,
I guess, the trust issues that my
yes.
mother had,
Oh,
and therefore
huge.
and therefore how that gets passed on from one
Yes,
generation to the next as well.
absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
as a child growing up within that environment, the trust issues that I had, and for myself, I was
Mm.
incredibly closed off from the world,
Mhm.
incredibly. And it's really only the last year or two that I've worked out how closed off I was, and
Wow.
really a mask that sat so so
Mhm.
deep within my identity that I didn't know it
Mhm.
was a mask,
Yeah.
that had been there literally from the age of 5, 6, 7 years old, that had
Wow.
formed from those life experiences, that meant
Mhm.
that was I really the true and authentic me
Yeah.
in all of my interactions? And the answer, when I started to delve deeper into that, was no.
Mhm.
And what really got me was, well, what is the true and authentic me if
Yeah.
it's not
So
the way I show up? Yeah, please.
may I hook in there?
Yeah.
How did you come to the realization that there was a mask that you were hiding behind?
Yeah. And what I guess what is really interesting was there'd been several clues along my life.
Mhm.
So one of the clues was when I was in my early 20s, and one of my best mates said to me, "I hardly know you at all." I went, "What does that mean?"
Oh, wow.
And he said, "I'm pouring out my whole life to you, and I feel like I
Mhm.
don't know anything about you."
Mhm.
Another clue that I've had was when I was in corporate, and we had done like a Myers-Briggs inventory, and my personality style was what I thought it was, which showed up as what it was. But there
Mhm.
was a few people in my team that said, "That's not you. That is not you." And
Interesting.
I've had a few people along the way say that, going, "That is not you.
Mhm.
The personality and the persona you're putting out, that is not you."
We're not
And it
matching.
came to a head about 12 months ago,
Mhm.
whereby I took another profile test, and the profile test was scientifically accurate, saying that there was a mask that I was putting out to the world, and from that mask, it would cause me stress, a deep stress, and to the point of disease if I didn't address it.
Wow.
So it took me about 4 to 5 months to actually unpack what did that even mean.
Mhm. And so did you unpack that by yourself, or did you have assistance from a coach, or how did you approach that?
Yeah, great question, Andrea. So I literally started to join all these missing clues, all
Mhm.
these pieces of the puzzle throughout my life,
Yeah.
whereby people had actually said, "That's not you."
Mhm.
So they'd been
Wow.
always there, but I never listened to them. I always
Mhm.
dismissed them.
Mhm.
And then what happened was I had a really fantastic friend who is a psychic saying, "The mask that you put out is a very masculine mask." Now, she had no idea of this particular
Yes.
profile. And she
Mhm.
goes, "But you are incredibly feminine."
Oh, wow.
And so that took me quite a while to unpack what that actually
Yeah.
meant. And me being in a household of all females at that really young age, and my mum and my sister incredibly have a lot of femininity
Mhm.
energy in them, I naturally took on the masculine mask at that very young age, and that masculine mask carried me through. However, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am now without that masculine mask, which is that determination, that
Yeah.
grit, that sense of achievement, that drive
Mhm.
to
Yes.
achieve all the life accolades that I have,
Yes.
as well as being a manager in
Mhm.
quite a few different corporates and a high-end
Mhm.
manager.
Mhm.
That's where that masculine mask has taken me.
Yeah.
However, I've realized now that that's not me.
Wow. What a beautiful realization. I love it. And I love the awareness around, to become aware of all those clues. It really takes a lot
Yeah.
to then put the pieces together because even, I mean, people can say to you, this is not you, and you can, you can listen to it, but not, like you said, you did it for a long time, but not really take it as a clue to really not being you. Oh my God, this is, this is huge.
Yeah. And literally you dismiss it. You dismiss all those clues until you're ready to look at it. And really what hit me in the face was basically this profile that I had taken with a coach, and he said the level of what you put out is a very different level, to the point where it is so incongruent with who you naturally are that it will cause disease. And I just went, what does that even mean?
That makes so much sense, because all we do is hide behind the mask, and it's very draining to do that because it's not our natural self.
Absolutely, yes.
Wow, I'm so glad you have worked it out.
It took me months of deep searching, and I'm still uncovering who that person is under the mask now.
Oh, I hear you.
And this is a lifetime of habits. And when I'm in situations, that mask can easily slip back on. And now it's about me being aware of it to go, hang on, I'm doing that mask thing again.
Yes, yes. And it's the same with women who end up being in manipulated relationships. Or even I had a conversation with Ronnie where she realized how much of a people pleaser she is in one of her jobs, where she was acting, or she was a salesperson for a real estate company, and doing that she realized how much of a people pleaser she was, which she never realized before. And me too today. I know I got into this relationship because I was such a people pleaser, and I was such a people pleaser because I had a very strong, controlling mother. And for me to get on with my mom and my dad, I had to become the people pleaser, because was I the rebel who my sister was, I wouldn't have gotten on that well. My sister clashed with my mom her entire life, really. Oh, so interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. And what you've described there is pretty much the example. I was the one that was always clashing with my mum, and my sister was the one that's always getting on with my mum. And I guess for me, it was always a case of, I'm not going to be like that, so I am going to be like this. And that resulted in clashing as such.
Yes. And for you to be different than your mom, you had to bring out that masculine energy.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, that is gold. Amazing. So I can imagine as a child witnessing what you have, there were a lot of fears that you were confronted with.
Yes.
And it's really mind-blowing how as a child you were already able to face those fears and say, no matter what, I'm not going to end up like this.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. Oops, just excuse me for just
one
minute.
All right. Is it feeding time?
It's feeding time, 100%.
Yes.
So
Beautiful. Well, what would you like to give, just to bring that to an end, so you can continue with being a mom, which is very important. What's one piece of advice you would like to give somebody who is stuck in whatever situation, whatever challenge they're facing?
Yeah, so I guess for me, it's really about being able to identify and just go, hang on a sec, I have the awareness now that I'm stuck. So that's first and foremost, is to have that awareness about the fact that you're stuck.
Good point.
And
also, sorry to interrupt you, awareness and also the honesty.
Yes.
to yourself, isn't it?
It is
To,
absolutely
mm,
100%. So
mhm,
having that awareness and honesty to yourself. And then the second step is to actually go, there's a better way.
yes.
Now, you might not know what that better way is,
Mm-mm.
but it's about following that path and that path of your own self-alignment. So to actually go, there is a better way if I follow myself,
Yes.
whatever that might be. And that was in a similar way to me leaving
Mm,
corporate world last year, going,
mhm.
I think there's a better way. I
Yeah.
don't know what that looks like, but I'm going to
Yeah.
follow that. So it's about having that inner trust in yourself to know that there is a better way.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yes, I think that's what it comes down to. And unfortunately, many people have lost it along the way. That inner trust.
Yeah.
That's what we want to find again. Because if we trust ourselves enough, then we trust our environment, we trust the process, and we can really achieve the unexpected, or yes, what we never would have dreamed of for ourselves. Yeah.
Exactly, 100%.
Self-trust is amazing.
It is.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Simone, for your time. And yes, I leave you now with your little Baba. Be the mom that he or she, I don't even know.
It's a he, and he's 2 weeks old.
2 weeks old only. I missed it. Oh my God, congratulations.
Thank you.
Amazing. What's his name?
His name is Max.
Max. Oh, beautiful. Hello, Max, and welcome to the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Simone.